Hell in a Cell was last night in the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, inside the WWE ThunderDome, and we got a fair few title changes and surprises last night at Hell in a Cell. So we're going to be going through all of the surprises, all of the title changes specifically. Well, title changes and a contract change that happened last night at Hell in a Cell. So spoilers ahead if you haven't seen Hell in a Cell yet. We'll give you a couple of seconds. Right, let's get into the title changes that took place last night at Hell in a Cell. Of course, arguably the biggest title change last night was the WWE Championship. We have a brand new WWE Champion, that being Randy Orton, after the Viper defeated Drew McIntyre last night. So number 14 is officially a reality for Randy Orton because Randy Orton is now a 14-time World Heavyweight Champion in WWE. He is now tied with Triple H as the man to have the second most World Championships in WWE history, behind John Cena, who of course has 16. Ric Flair has 16 World Championships, but specifically in WWE, there is only one man that's had more title reigns than Triple H and Randy Orton, and that is John Cena. Now, I think a lot of people thought, myself included, that when Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton was booked for the third time at Hell in a Cell, for me, and this is why, I've been predicting since August that Randy Orton was going to become WWE Champion, but it felt rather inevitable that eventually Randy Orton was going to become the WWE Champion. Eventually, the plans were for Randy Orton to defeat Drew McIntyre. Now, the match last night at Hell in a Cell, slow start. You can go and watch my live reactions to it on the watch-along that we did on the channel. It took a while to get going. The pace did eventually pick up. It was your typical Randy Orton match, I felt. I thought it was a slow pace and then slowly built to a crescendo at the end. Arguably the biggest spot of the match was Drew McIntyre coming off of about 10 foot. They both men climbed up Hell in a Cell. They brawled on top of the cell for a while. They're coming back down on the other side. As they're about 10 feet up, you have Randy Orton attack Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre falls off of Hell in a Cell and goes through the announce table. This then led to both men getting back inside the cell. Drew McIntyre manages to rally a bit, goes for a Claymore. Randy Orton ducks, hits an RKO, and Randy Orton is the new WWE Champion. Now, as far as Drew McIntyre goes, and I think I'm going to do a video that's a bit more in-depth on this. I am going to do a video. It's probably going to be dropping over the following weekend, I think, because I think there needs to be a bit of an in-depth discussion about Drew McIntyre and his WWE Championship reign. Drew McIntyre has had arguably the most difficult WWE title reign in history. Really has. Being the face of Monday Night Raw with no crowds, being a WWE Champion not performing in front of a paid fan in attendance once, being the WWE Champion during the pandemic era has been incredibly tough. Incredibly tough for Drew McIntyre, and I think he's done a fantastic job. I really do. I think it was an unprecedented moment for Drew McIntyre, and an unprecedented moment for WWE, and every single title defense that Drew McIntyre has done, he's delivered. And you look back at the matches that he's had throughout this WWE Championship run, with matches against Seth Rollins, Bobby Lashley, Dolph Ziggler, and these multiple matches he's had with Randy Orton, he's done incredibly well. So I think there has to be a credit given to Drew McIntyre because I think he's done a fantastic job. I don't think it's going to be the last time, I hope not anyway, that he's the WWE Champion. Now, it's interesting to think about when we're going to have the rematch, because I think a rematch is inevitable. I think a rematch is inevitable. I know some people are saying about Survivor Series next month, and people are saying, well, it's definitely not going to happen at Survivor Series because Survivor Series is Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT. And I look back on that and I say, well, look at 2019 Survivor Series. Yes, we had Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT, but we also had 3 world title matches last year on that show. We had the NXT Championship was on the line, Adam Cole versus Pete Dunne, arguably stole the show. We had the WWE Championship on the line as Brock Lesnar went up against Rey Mysterio, and we had the Universal Championship on the line as The Fiend went against Daniel Bryan. So it's not out of the realm of possibility in the slightest that we're going to have Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre once again at Survivor Series next month. So I wouldn't rule that out completely. I do think we will get a rematch between Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. I think the feud has become so personal and so physical, and we've had injury angles, we've had legends being attacked, we've had all of this sort of stuff. I can't see Drew McIntyre just dropping the championship and then disappearing from the picture. So I do think we're going to have the rematch at some point. I also think you have to think about who's going to be the feud after Drew McIntyre, because Randy Orton obviously isn't going to drop the WWE Championship anytime soon. I think personally the feud after Drew McIntyre for Randy Orton will be The Fiend. I think you look at the history that Randy Orton has with Bray Wyatt. Of course, Randy Orton infiltrated the Wyatt family back in, when was that, 2016, and they had the match at WrestleMania in 2017. Randy Orton burnt down the Wyatt family compound, and they had the match at WrestleMania where actually Randy Orton defeated Bray Wyatt to become WWE Champion. All of that, I think, they'll play off of. You look at the Fiend's feuds he's had in WWE, he's like to revisit past issues and past mistakes in his WWE career, whether that's with Daniel Bryan or whether that's with John Cena. He likes to revisit that stuff, and I think he will revisit that feud with Randy Orton. So I think personally, I think a Randy Orton versus The Fiend WWE Championship feud is on the horizon. Also, The Fiend was scheduled to feud with Roman Reigns on SmackDown for the Universal Championship before the storyline with Jey Uso got so fantastic. So The Fiend has been penciled in for a World Championship feud, and I think instead of it being Roman Reigns on SmackDown, it might be Randy Orton on Raw. Also as well, after that feud with the Fiend, and I know I'm skipping ahead of quite a few opponents here, you have to think that Randy Orton is now the WWE Champion because of his rivalry with Edge. It's been reported and rumoured for a long, long time that WWE, specifically Vince McMahon, wanted Randy Orton to become WWE Champion because he wanted to add the WWE Championship to that feud with Edge when the Rated R Superstar does indeed return to WWE from injury. Now, obviously, they've had 2 matches so far in the rivalry. They had the Last Man Standing match at WrestleMania 36. That divided opinion, certainly divided opinion, and people saying it was too long, it was slow, etc. You also had the match at Backlash, the greatest wrestling match ever, which I think did a fantastic job, to be honest. I think it got critically acclaimed by a lot of people. I think they did a great job considering it was never, ever, ever going to be the greatest wrestling match ever, but they did a fantastic job nevertheless. Unfortunately, the problem was in that one that Edge got injured. He tore his triceps in a pickup spot for an RKO. So we know that Edge is going to come back. He's not retiring or anything like that. The rehab, by all accounts, has been slower than expected, and I think they wanted, or they'd hoped that Edge was going to be back sooner. He is going to be back by Royal Rumble time, they're hoping. Certainly he's going to be back for WrestleMania, so we're going to have that third match in the rivalry. We're going to have the trilogy. We're going to have Edge versus Randy Orton 3, and by all accounts, WWE wants to add the WWE Championship to that match at WrestleMania. Now, I've mentioned this quite a few times. Does the feud between Edge and Randy Orton need the WWE Championship? Of course it doesn't. It really doesn't. Edge versus Randy Orton 3 sells itself. Edge versus Randy Orton, the feud that has been going on for a year, sells itself. Edge versus Randy Orton anyway at WrestleMania sells itself. The WWE Championship doesn't need to be added to that feud. There have been rumours about it being an I Quit match. For me, the only reason why I can think possibly that they've added the WWE Championship to this match is because I think the only thing I can think that would be positive about that is Edge winning the WWE Championship, and what a story that would be. I think the story about Edge, 2011, he retired. He can never take another bump again. If he takes a bump, he could be paralyzed. You're never going to work again. Medically forced into retirement before his time. A miraculous recovery. Somehow he's cleared to once again compete in the ring. What a miracle story. How do you top that? You top that by winning the WWE Championship. You go from never being able to be touched in the ring again to being at the pinnacle of WWE as a WWE Champion. I can see that's why they would do that side of it. It's a great story. It's a miracle story. It's a fairy tale story without a shadow of a doubt. My only thing would be is logistically, can that work? Is Edge going to be on Monday Night Raw every week as WWE Champion? Is Edge going to be having matches on Monday Night Raw as WWE Champion? The answer there is no. So if he does become WWE Champion, then what next? We don't want to have a part-time champion, and I think Edge has too big of an ego and too much pride to be a part-time champion. He doesn't want to be like a Brock Lesnar. No offense to Brock Lesnar, but Edge knows the tradition. Edge knows what the fans want, and yes, it would be nice for Edge to be WWE Champion, but logistically, can that be pulled off? I don't know if it can. That would be what I would say. So going back to Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton, I think we are going to get a rematch at Survivor Series. in terms of future opponents for Drew coming out of this Randy Orton rivalry, of course Drew McIntyre won't be the WWE Champion anymore, but he still needs opponents on Raw as he's going to be built back up. I think he's going to be kept strong still, because eventually that title's coming back round to him, and hopefully when it comes back round we're going to have a crowd there, we're going to have a big reaction. Imagine he won the WWE Championship at Wembley Stadium or at Hampden Park or in Ibrox or whatever in Scotland, in his home country. That could be a magic moment, and I hope that's what they're working towards, because he certainly does deserve it. So in terms of future opponents for Drew McIntyre, who could that be? I think you look at the likes of Sheamus. Obviously, there's the British connection there, the Celtic connection, if you were. They're good friends in real life. I could see that storyline happening. Also, Elias. Elias is being pushed as a top heel on Monday Night Raw right now. So again, I could see a Drew McIntyre versus Elias feud. And also AJ Styles. AJ Styles is AJ Styles. He is one of the biggest and best names in WWE. I think everyone would want to see a Drew McIntyre versus AJ Styles feud. We haven't really seen it before, and I think that's something that a lot of people want to see. So another title change that took place last night was the SmackDown Women's Championship. We have a brand new SmackDown Women's Champion in the Boss, Sasha Banks. Now, it was third time lucky for the Boss as she became the SmackDown Women's Champion for the first time inside Hell in a Cell, her third appearance inside Hell in a Cell. The previous two times she had lost to Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, but last night at Hell in a Cell, she was able to defeat her former best friend, her former WWE Women's Tag Team Champion partner Bayley, and become the SmackDown Women's Champion. Banks and Bayley went to hell and back over the title inside the demonic Satan's Playground structure. The match was months, if not years, in the making, quite frankly, and the action was fast, it was furious. Both competitors went at it in crazy innovative offense, and it was fantastic. Bayley used the likes of kendo sticks and steel chairs to her advantage. Sasha Banks brought in tables and fire extinguishers into the fray. Bayley also opted for ladders and chairs. It was brilliant. It was intense. It was violent. It was stiff, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. We had the finish whereby Sasha Banks used the steel chair to lock in the bank statement on Bayley and managed to make Bayley tap out, and we have a brand new SmackDown Women's Champion. Now, it was a match worthy of the storyline. It was a match worthy of the build to it. It was a beautiful display of violence, I've seen people call it. It had passion, it had drama. It was everything that I think everyone expected it would be, and some more. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And Sasha Banks now joins Bayley and Asuka as Grand Slam champions in WWE. They have held all the available female gold in WWE. That's the Raw Women's Championship, the SmackDown Women's Championship, the NXT Women's Championship, and the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship. The match was an absolute classic. That's what it was. It was an absolute classic. I think it was probably the best female Hell in a Cell match we've ever seen in WWE history. Without a shadow of a doubt, Sasha Banks is the queen of Hell in a Cell matches. She really is. She has been in every single one of them, so she has to be. But I thought it was just on another level last night. It was such innovative offense, truly gripping stuff. They stood out from the other two Hell in a Cell matches on the show, which I thought all Hell in a Cell matches last night I thought were very, very good, very different. They needed to be. For me, 3 Hell in a Cell matches in one show is too many, but I thought everyone did a fantastic job. But this match, it just stood out. It just stood out. For me, I felt that it should have been the main event. I felt like at the time when it was revealed that it wasn't the main event, I thought, okay, well, this isn't going to be the main event. The WWE Championship match is going to be the main event because they've got something big planned. I thought, well, they've obviously got something big planned with Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre, possibly a Money in the Bank cash-in, but it wasn't the case. And the only thing that happened that was big in the main event was the title switch, and maybe that's the biggest thing coming out of the show, Randy Orton becoming a 14-time world champion, etc. But I just felt like this match with Sasha Banks and Bayley could and probably should have been the main event of the show. Personally, and if you've watched any of the videos I've done on this feud, I felt like this could have been the WrestleMania main event, quite frankly. This is a match that had been building since WrestleMania 35 in April of 2019, and probably even before then. So this is a story that's been told for 18 months, so I felt it was fitting and worthy of a Hell in a Cell match, but I wish at the very least it was the main event. I wish it was the WrestleMania main event. In terms of, again, will there be a rematch for Bayley? There will be. There absolutely will be. It's inevitable that there will be. This feud isn't over just yet. Bayley was the champion for 380 days, even longer if you take out the 7 days in which she didn't hold the title, which sort of cemented her heel turn. So you don't just drop the title after nearly 400 days of being the champion and not get a rematch and just drop the feud. So there's going to be a rematch. We'll see Bayley versus Banks again, which is fantastic, which is absolutely fantastic because the match was absolutely fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to that. Again, will that happen at Survivor Series? That one is a little bit iffy if it will happen there. I could see that happening maybe in December at TLC. I could see a TLC match between Sasha Banks and Bayley happening there. So we're going to see a rematch. We'll see a rematch. It's inevitable, and it'll be possibly even better than last night's match if that's possible, because last night's match was absolutely brilliant. I think another thing you do have to consider here as well is that Sasha Banks is in season 2 of The Mandalorian on Disney+, and it's a massive deal. It's a massive deal for Sasha Banks, and it's a massive deal for the WWE. It's a huge deal for the boss to be in the Star Wars universe. You know the fandom that comes with that. So Sasha Banks is really, really going to become a big deal over the next couple of weeks and months. She's going to be in the mainstream press. A lot of people who are unfamiliar with her are going to find out who she is and that she is associated with WWE. She is going to get a lot of people talking, and a lot of people are going to be talking about Sasha Banks. A lot of people are going to be talking about her. So from a WWE point of view, in terms of press and in terms of PR, it does make sense for WWE to put the bout on Sasha Banks, knowing that a lot of people are going to be talking about the boss very soon. So I think, again, that's another reason maybe why they rushed this match to having it now, and why they put the bout on Sasha Banks right now too. And finally, the last switch, if you were, title change, wasn't a championship, but the Money in the Bank contract, because that is The Miz becoming the new Mr. Money in the Bank. He is the new holder of the Money in the Bank contract after defeating Otis last night at Hell in a Cell. Now, last night, Otis put up his Money in the Bank contract against The Miz. This is a feud that's been going on for a while now, with The Miz and John Morrison attempting to steal the briefcase on a number of occasions. He'd had Tucker drafted to Raw, he had Mandy Rose traded to Raw, but it led to the Law and Otis segment this past Friday on SmackDown, whereby the judge JBL awarded The Miz the victory in the case, meaning that last night at Hell in a Cell, the Money in the Bank briefcase had to be defended, whereby the winner of the match becoming the new holder of the Money in the Bank contract. Unfortunately, though, for Otis last night at Hell in a Cell, he lost more than just the Money in the Bank briefcase and contract. He also lost his tag team partner in Tucker. As Otis dominated The Miz for the majority of the match, John Morrison actually got himself thrown out by the referee after attempting to interfere on several occasions. This then led many people to think that Otis was going to win, but then, wouldn't you know it, luckily for The Miz, Tucker had other plans, as the Heavy Machinery member would hit Otis over the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase, knocking him out. The Miz was as shocked as everyone else in the WWE Universe and managed to cover Otis and get the Money in the Bank briefcase on Monday Night Raw. Otis is without his girlfriend, he's without his tag team partner now, who has abandoned him, and he's also without his Money in the Bank briefcase. Heavy Machinery is no more. It's just the latest tag team to be split up by WWE. They were split up in the draft, but now they're officially split up, I guess, as well. But it'll be interesting to see how Otis gets his revenge, if he gets his revenge, because he and Tucker are, of course, on different brands as well. Now, after the match, we had a backstage promo with The Miz and John Morrison. Tucker came up and he cut a promo, did the classic, "Oh, it's all about me. I was the workhorse of the team. Otis can't even tie up his shoes. Oh, he wasn't a tag team partner, blah, blah, blah." But Otis wasn't having this. He attacked Tucker backstage and they brawled throughout the Amway Center. So I don't think this feud is over. I think we're going to see probably a Tucker versus Otis match at some point, which to me doesn't make any sense, considering if they're going to feud, they're on separate brands. So how does that work? It just shows once again that the brand split is completely non-existent right now, really. It is. It's non-existent. It's you've just had the draft and you're already breaking your own rules when it comes to the draft. I mean, that is textbook WWE. But going to the decision to have Otis drop the Money in the Bank briefcase, I think ultimately it's the right call. And I think, look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and obviously a lot of people are using hindsight when it comes to Otis and the Money in the Bank briefcase. I think you have to be fair and you have to be rational about this, and you have to go back to when Otis won the Money in the Bank contract in May. He was coming off all of this momentum after a great start of the year. He'd had his WrestleMania feud, a match with Dolph Ziggler. They'd had the storyline with Mandy Rose, which is a massive hit. It was a fantastic storyline, really well done. And he was on a roll. He was unique. He's got a unique look, a unique character, he's likable, he had that intangible it factor that a lot of charismatic wrestlers have that get into the main event. He felt like wrestling's version of Chris Farley, and Chris Farley was a very likable guy and a very popular guy on Saturday Night Live and in his movies. Some people didn't like his style of comedy, but he was a very popular guy. And I think WWE, specifically Vince McMahon, looked at that and said, you know what, there might be something there with Otis. So they gave him the Money in the Bank contract, and it divided opinion at the time. I think a lot of people questioned if Otis was truly the right guy to go to the level of potentially being a world champion, whether it's the WWE champion or the Universal champion. But many, and I'll put myself in this, myself included, I felt like there was something there. And I think a lot of people felt like, you know what, there might be something there with Otis. He is different, he is unique, and maybe he is a bit too comical, but maybe there is something there. And you have to remember the status of SmackDown at the time. This was a time at SmackDown where the Universal Champion was Braun Strowman, so the top babyface is Braun Strowman. The second top babyface was a returning Jeff Hardy. You had no Roman Reigns, he was on the sideline. You had no real babyface. It was in the middle of the empty arena WWE Performance Center show. SmackDown was in turmoil. The WWE, quite frankly, was in turmoil. And WWE needed to try and do something different. They needed to try and make new big stars, and they tried it with Otis. However, all of these months later, it's just become more and more obvious and apparent that Otis isn't going to be a world champion. Otis isn't on the level of being a world champion. His booking has been bad. The comedy has just way outweighed the seriousness to a degree where it's not even funny anymore. The comedy has gone to new levels of stupid, and the briefcase, it just hasn't elevated him at all. A lot of the time when someone becomes Mr. Money in the Bank, sometimes it does the opposite, but a lot of the time it's meant to elevate you. Edge is the example, isn't he? He's the first and he's the best example of this. He won the Money in the Bank briefcase and it legitimized him. He became more and more serious. People gradually accepted that he could be a true contender to be the WWE champion. And all of these months later, it's just become more and more apparent that Otis isn't going to be a world champion. The briefcase hasn't elevated him at all. If anything, it's done the opposite effect. And given that Otis was on SmackDown, Otis was never going to cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase on Roman Reigns. Otis was never going to become a world champion. It just seems so far away at this point. Now, personally, if I was to choose who would have the Money in the Bank briefcase out of The Miz and John Morrison, I would much rather have John Morrison hold the Money in the Bank briefcase. But The Miz holding the Money in the Bank contract and the briefcase isn't a bad thing at all. The Miz is essentially bulletproof in WWE. He is a safe bet. The Miz can cash in that briefcase. He can become WWE Champion on Monday Night Raw, and it's entirely believable. The Miz has been WWE Champion before. He's a solid choice to be champion. He is a safe bet. And to be honest, if you think about his career in WWE with everything that he's done, it's crazy to think that he's never got another run with the WWE Championship after winning it all of those years ago and main eventing WrestleMania with John Cena. But if you look on the flip side of things as well, The Miz can hold the Money in the Bank briefcase. He can cash it in and lose, and it really doesn't hurt The Miz at all. It really doesn't matter. Because I think deep down a lot of people don't think he's going to cash it in successfully anyway. So maybe getting the briefcase off of Otis in a way protects Otis from the big failure that was coming. Because The Miz can cash in and lose, and it doesn't matter. He's bulletproof. That's The Miz. The Miz is a safe bet. The Miz is a safe bet, and that's why I think ultimately they've switched it. Is because in a way, maybe it protects Otis, and The Miz is a safe bet. They can go either way with him. They can make him the champion, it would work. They can make him cash it in and lose, and he would be fine as well. So, to be honest as well, if you look at The Miz's career in WWE, on several occasions, The Miz has had several runs in WWE where he has done work that's worthy of being a WWE World Champion, and it hasn't been rewarded. So this is his chance. I remember Miz on Monday Night Raw 2017 with the Miz Taraj, that could have been a World Champion. The Miz in 2016 on SmackDown, or start of 2017 on SmackDown with a feud with John Cena and all that could have been a world champion. So multiple times he's been at that level of being a world champion, but he's never got the shot. So it'll be interesting. This is his chance. This is his chance to maybe become a world champion once again. Now, do I think The Miz is going to become a WWE champion on Raw anytime soon? No, I don't. Randy Orton has just won the championship. I think he's going to be feuding with Drew McIntyre and The Fiend and Edge over the next few months heading into 2021. But The Miz has all of these connections with the USA Network. The Miz is on 3 USA Network shows. He's on Monday Night Raw, obviously. He's on Miz and Mrs. And he also is the host of Cannonball. So the USA Network really likes The Miz, So I wouldn't be surprised if the USA Network have had a little bit of influence over this as well, saying, you know what, hey WWE, why don't you make The Miz the WWE champion and we'll make him the face of the network, because he's on 3 shows. So who knows? The Miz obviously has until May of next year to cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase. That's when Otis won it. So I wouldn't be stunned. I wouldn't be stunned if The Miz won it. And the thing I will say here is, I mentioned at the top of this video with Edge and Randy Orton. Edge wins the WWE Championship from Randy Orton at WrestleMania, but Edge can't be the WWE Champion where he's on Raw every week. Edge can't be the champion where he's having matches every week because his body can't handle it. So how does that logistically happen? What happens is, Edge wins the WWE Championship from Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and then the following night, The Miz cashes in and becomes WWE Champion. I'm just saying, if it happens, you heard it here first. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the title changes and surprises from Hell in a Cell last night? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys and chatting about WWE here on the channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button as well. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.